In ground RB, the biggest balancers against CAS at top tier are radar-guided SPA and SAMs. From the simple M163 VADs to the venerable Flarakrad, there's no doubt that CAS and helicopter spam at top tier would be a bigger problem if there were no effective SPAAs. However, there are times that aircraft at top tier just seem to have no counter against missiles. Once an ADATS or an ITO-90M fires a missile, there seems to be no other recourse than to cancel the attack run and do evasive maneuvers. This is what's plaguing the A-10s in this update. Top of that, SPAs are cheap to spawn in and can effectively sit at spawn, picking off aircraft. This makes a case for anti-radiation missiles in War Thunder. Today, we're going to explore suppression of enemy air defenses and anti-radiation missiles and how they can be implemented in War Thunder. What is suppression of enemy air defenses? At the broadest of definitions, suppression of enemy air defenses refers to merely the act of destroying enemy air defenses or rendering them inoperable or ineffective. SEAD can refer to aircraft using bombs and rockets on anti-air guns and SAM sites in their respective radar systems. It can also refer to electronic disruptions of enemy systems through jamming. SEAD is a very broad term defining a wide range of missions, and in some cases, War Thunder already has SEAD. The very act of launching a tow missile by a helicopter to an SPAA or SAM is considered SEAD. So how would anti-radiation missiles play a role in all this? Anti-radiation missiles work through passive radar homing systems. Like passive sonar submarines, they home in on signals emitted by the target instead of radar guidance to guide the missile towards the target. This works by mounting a seeker to head to a missile on the same radar band as the target radar. To operate the missile, the seeker is first activated by the pilot in the general area of operations until a tone is heard. The missile is then fired, brevity code Magnum, and guides itself towards the target. The earliest anti-radiation missiles, like the Agm-45 Strike, used preset seekers against predetermined targets. The Strike had 10 variants to cover different radar bands for every radar that the North Vietnamese employed during the Vietnam War, which was the Strike's first of many limitations. Later generation anti-radiation missiles would employ seekers that covered a wide variety of radar bands that required little to no prediction of intended targets. Of course, anti-radiation missiles work by targeting radar emissions. A viable tactic against anti-radiation missiles is turning off the radar itself. While the Strike would easily be affected by such tactics, which again was one of its biggest drawbacks, improved missiles like the Standard Arm incorporated an inertial guidance system to guide the missile to the target's coordinates, even after the signal disappears. However, as it is only working off the last known location of the target when it had its radar activated, self-propelled radar systems can simply move and avoid the missiles. Now, even the most modern of anti-radiation missiles have counters against this tactic. The Alarm missile deploys a parachute to keep it in the air until the source of radiation returns and it burns a second stage rocket motor to complete the attack. Anti-radiation missiles, while primarily focused on ground RB and SPAA, can also work on the SAMs in airfields for air RB. If you notice, the RWR always sticks in the direction of your airfield or the opponent's airfield. This means that the Rolands are already coded with a radar signal that ARMs can home on. In War Thunder, anti-radiation missiles will be extra simplified. Instead of being locked to certain radar frequencies, the only limitation ARMs will have will be range, IFF, and actual radar source. It will nullify the Strike's limitation and may actually be a way to have the KH-28, which was optimized to target MIM-23 Hawk and Thunderbird SAM systems, added to SU-17s and SU-22s in-game. In War Thunder, the Agm-45 Strike can be mounted onto the A4E Skyhawk of both US and Israel, A7D and E-Corsair II, F4C and F4E Phantom of both US and Israel, and F105D Thunder Chief. The Agm-78 Standard Arm can be mounted only on the Israeli F4E Phantom, as in US service they were launched from A6B and A6E aircraft, and the F105G and F4G Wild Weasel variants only. The Agm-122 sidearm, owing it to it being a conversion of the AIM-9C, was weaker and had less range than the Strike and Standard Arm. It could theoretically be mounted on the AH-1Z, as the AH-1W was a main user of the Agm-122, as well as the AV-8A and AV-8C. The Agm-88 Harm can be mounted on the F4G Wild Weasel variants as well as the A7E Cruiser 2. Outside of those, it can be mounted on the A6 Intruder, EA6B Prowler, F-18 Hornet, and EA-18G Growler, the Strike Eagle, F-16C Block 30 and newer, and non-USAF aircraft like the Tornado IDS and ECR, Eurofighter Typhoon, and more. For the British, the Alarm can be fired from the Sea Harrier FA-2, their Tornado ADV and IDS variants, and theoretically, they are capable to be fired by Jaguars. The AS-37 Martel is more interesting as on top of the French Jaguars, the Blackburn Buccaneer could also fire 4 AS-37 AG-168 Martels. The Mirage 3 and F1 could also carry 1 in the underbelly or 2 in the wing pylons. The Soviets kinda have weird anti-radiation missiles. Rather than going for the traditional route of making a secret that can home in on basically any source, the early ARMs were developed to be optimized against a specific set of radars. The KH-28, as mentioned above, was optimized against MiG-23 Hawk and Thunderbird SAM systems. This was also the case with the KH-25MP until the modular KH-25MPU missile came along that allowed inclusion of Crotel and Roland systems as optimal targets. Of course, this didn't mean you could use them on other radars. Certainly in War Thunder, the limitation of radar band would be removed to make them usable. The Su-24M is a common launch platform for the modern anti-radiation missiles of the Soviets. From the KH-28 to the KH-58, the Su-24M was capable of firing them. The KH-28 was also present on the Su-17, 20, 22 series of aircraft. The KH-31P could be launched from virtually every modern Soviet aircraft except the MiG-29A and MiG-31. Interestingly, the Indian HAL Tejas could also carry and launch the KH-31P. The KH-58 could be launched from the Su-24M, Su-25TK, Su-22M4, MiG-25BM, and the Su-30MK. China has 3 anti-radiation missiles, the HD-5, a variant of the HQ-61 that never made it into service after the purchase of the KH-31P. There was an unnamed variant of the PL-12 that could home in on AWACS aircraft, and the YJ-91, an upgrade of the KH-31P mounted on the JH-7, J-10, J-11, and J-13. I think anti-radiation missiles will have a place in War Thunder given that they provide a more specific offensive armament against radar SPAA rather than using generalized AGMs and ATGMs. I believe we can have Tech Tree Wild Weasel variants as they are capable of defending themselves as they can still carry sidewinders. While the F4G gives its gun off for the AN APR-47, it can still carry standard 2 AIM-9s on a single wing pylon, with harms and strikes on the Sparrow weapon stations. It's only when carrying the standard arm that the F4G gives up the sidewinders. The F-105G retains its 20mm while carrying strikes and standard arms on the wing pylons. The Tornado ECR of Germany removes the 227mm cannons, but carries 2 AIM-9 sidewinders on its wing pylons. The Italian ECR carries both the guns and the AIM-9s. However, dedicated electronic warfare aircraft like the EA-6B Prowler and EA-18G Growler can be premium as they do not carry a gun or AIM-9s. The EA-6B is generally undefended while the EA-18G can carry 2 AMRAAMs for self-defense. Generally speaking, it's easier to have electronic warfare aircraft and Wild Weasel variants as premiums. I do hope we see this feature soon, maybe starting out with ARMs on existing aircraft before electronic warfare aircraft arrive. I think jammers on electronic warfare aircraft need a separate video just to discuss how they could simplify it for War Thunder, so I'll leave it at that. Once again, thanks for watching. Fair skies and fair flights. This is the Dr. MD. Godspeed.